So anyway, let's talk a little bit about Africa, the great elephant ear continent. Sudan is the largest country geographically in Africa. And it's one of those things, I'm a history buff, I love history. Sudan is the place that's never been in the spotlight, but has always been there. It's the source of the Nile River. There was a line of Nubian pharaohs of the Nubian mountains of Sudan. The Roman legions used to get entire slave armies that were bought upriver along the Nile. It recently has been in the papers because of Darfur, which is Western Sudan, not talking about that, and the Civil War. Sudan got its independence in 1956, and it's been at war since then. A peace was declared in 2005. It was a bloodbath. It was an absolute bloodbath. You have a predominantly Arab, Muslim north, and a black Christian animist south. You have a very educated north and a very poor and uneducated south. And you have, and I'm treading here delicately because the politics are somewhat complicated, but the fact is the president of Sudan has been accused of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. Okay, and that's whether or not he's guilty. I'm just a doctor. I'm not a. That's the UN's role, is to get involved there. But it's a very messy place, and this particular leader has made a career out of destabilizing areas, out of arming different ethnic groups and saying, go ahead in and do what you need to do to destabilize the region. So they say, again, I'm just a doctor, but this is the environment by which we work. Another thing to note, Sudan has the second largest oil deposits in Africa. They're all in the south. In January of 2011, the South voted to secede from the North by a vote of 96%. In July, South Sudan will, as predicted, will be its own nation. And all of us are watching this very carefully. So as you read the newspapers and watch what's going on in South Sudan, this area here was where I was for 9 months. And just looking at South Sudan, geographically, this is a region the size of Texas plus New Mexico. In South Sudan, there's about 15 miles total of paved roads. 1 in 7 women die in childbirth. The figures are a bit tough to calculate because we don't have a good idea, but about 80% of the population lives on less than $1 or less than $2 a day, 40% less than $1 a day, or what the WHO describes as, or the World Bank describes as extreme poverty. And where I was right here, a little town called Kiari in the Jonglei province, and I just want to give you a little tour of my village. Okay, so just a little bit of background. You know, Santa Barbara's my home. And I was living in Santa Barbara for a year. I was sleeping in my friend's garage, saving money, working night shifts at Cottage Hospital in the ER, saving my money, and so I could go do what I'd always dreamed about doing as a kid, you know, pitch for the major leagues of medicine, right? Work for Doctors Without Borders. And I came, so leaving Santa Barbara for this place, just understand, as I go through these slides, like the day we had yesterday in Santa Barbara, that's what I left to go here. So here's my village. Nothing special. We had a great airstrip. There's our airstrip. In fact, our airplane was our lifeline. Every 10 days we had an airplane come in that would bring us medical supplies or food. And here's one of our airplanes. You can see that's Gabe. He's a bush pilot. I don't know if any of you guys have ever worked in conflict zones. Bush pilots come in 2 breeds. They're either missionaries or mercenaries. Right? You know, they say that what kind of people join MSF, right? The missionaries, the mercenaries, the misfits. Those are the people you find in the international humanitarian aid world. So Gabe was not a missionary. Gabe, you know, he wasn't there out of his religious belief. He used to run guns into Somalia during the American occupation in the early 90s, and he found that running vaccines and antibiotics was more lucrative. So that was Gabe. He was a great guy to share beers with because he had told amazing, amazing stories. And if you ever needed a guy to fly a single propeller airplane onto a muddy runway while dodging goats under AK-47 fire, he was your guy. He was your guy. And this is our water pump. And so the airstrip's just behind there. Our compound where we lived was just in front, and the clinic was just beyond. And fellas, if you ever want to know, this transcends all culture, all places in the world. If you ever want to know what's going on in a community, pay attention to women. The women always know what's going on. So when I landed, I had a security briefing for my project coordinator. And he said, when you hear gunfire, look at the water pump. Because in Nuer culture, women fetch water for their families. And if you see them laughing and smiling and fetching water, that means someone's shooting their gun up in the air at a wedding, or maybe they're shooting hyenas, they're attacking cows. No big deal. No big deal. If you ever see them drop their jerry cans and run, then get ready for trouble. We had bush run bags that we had pre-packed in case security ever got nasty, and we would grab our bush run bag and we'd drill, like running out in the bush to hide, to wait to be rescued. Okay, so that's our water pump. And I love taking pictures. And there's our team. And I don't watch a lot of television. I just moved back to Santa Barbara after being in conflict zones for the last 5 years. And I bought a television, my first TV since college. It's really cool. Actually, they're very thin now. You can put them on the wall. It's amazing. Anyway, I never watched reality TV, but I figured good reality TV, this is it. You take a group of people from lots of different countries, lots of different backgrounds. You put them in a confined space. You raise the temperature to 110 degrees. You have people shoot AK-47s on the outside, add bats, snakes, 14-hour work days, malnutrition, polio, and measles, and then vote someone off every month. I mean, that's like a good show, right? So this is my team, and there's me. I'm the team doctor. Then Isabel, she was our base nurse. She's from Germany. Daniel was our outreach nurse. He was from Sierra Leone. Pip was our project coordinator. She was from the UK. Ute was our midwife. She's from Germany. Pete, in the middle there, was our technical logistician. He's the guy that kept the generators running and kept the electricity on. He is French-Canadian from Montreal. His background is weird. He used to be a logistician for a traveling circus and decided he wasn't feeling real fulfilled. But if you needed a guy to fix a generator with rubber bands and toothpicks, you could do it. Betty was our data analyzer. She's from Mombasa, Kenya. Numbers are sexy. I love data. And if you really know what's going on, you have to be very vigilant about surveillance. In the middle there is Sarah. She's from Toronto, Canada. She was our administrative logistician. She did the hiring and firing. We were the biggest employer in town. And then Brenda is an ER nurse from Colorado. And that was our team. That was my family for 9 months. And this is where we live. This is Isabel inviting us into the compound. And this is, we had fuel tanks so that we can refuel planes as they landed. We each had a little mud tucle, a little mud hut, and a mosquito net and a trunk, and this is where we live. We had solar panels that helped keep the computers going. This is our shower. If you wanted a hot shower, you took it in the afternoon. That bucket gets very, very hot. This is where I lived. It's just like any apartment I've ever had. It's a pigsty. But, I had a mosquito net, and the Anopheles mosquitoes and night eaters, so if you want to stay malaria-free, you got to sleep under the mosquito net. Very Spartan, very, very Spartan living situation. We had a lot of visitors. We had hedgehogs, and you always had to make sure you kept your boots upright because they were day sleepers. And if you ever left your boots on the side, they'd crawl in there and go to sleep. And you get called to the clinic, you put your foot in, you're like, whoa, ouch. and then this is my tuple, bats. Some comic book writer somewhere glorified bats. Yeah, that guy's a jerk. Bats are nasty, flying, pissing rodents that make a lot of noise. I hate them. And there were snakes. Daniel, our outreach nurse, and I had a snake killing contest to see who can kill the most snakes. And it's one of those machismo, beat your chest things. He won because he's tougher than me. I think in the 6 months that we were overlapping, he killed 22, and I killed 12 or something. But yeah, I know, exactly. And this was one of my first project coordinators from Kenya before Pip came. And he's this Kenyan guy that, you name it, he had worked there. Pakistan, he'd been in the Middle East, in Africa, he'd been in Congo. And he would always say, and this is one thing I always tell my medical students as well, when you see a snake in the bush, you kill it with what's in your hand. Meaning, sometimes you have a problem and you might not have the ideal resources at your disposal, but you got to use what you got. Right? And that's kind of, we always say in MSF, sometimes good enough has to be good enough. Don't hate yourself, hate the circumstance.